Welcome to the Eerie Hour. Some places don't just haunt you, they wait. They settle into the quiet spaces of your mind like dust, then begin to move when you aren't looking. Tonight, we unpack one such waiting place, a house, perhaps, or the echo of one. Listen closely, for the walls have ears, and sometimes the pipes have voices. If you enjoy descending into the strange and the forgotten, don't forget to like and subscribe, and share your theories below. Now, let's begin. But remember, once the story starts, something always follows. You arrive at the house under a sky the color of tired steel. It stands back from the road, settled deep in overgrown grass, a relic of a time less hurried and perhaps less sane. You tell yourself, it's just old. The air inside is thick, smelling of dust and something else. Damp earth, maybe, or forgotten potpourri. The furniture is heavy, draped in sheets like patient ghosts. Your bags sit by the door, waiting. The silence presses in, then breaks. A low, resonant gurgle somewhere in the walls, followed by a sharp, metallic clank. Old pipes, you think, dismissing it as a charmingly inconvenient quirk. But the sounds don't stop. They form a strange, varied symphony. Groans, whistles, and then a distinct, rhythmic drip. It's not just a drip, though. Sometimes it slows. Sometimes speeds. Sometimes it seems to hold its breath before falling again. One specific drip, emanating from deep within the main wall of the living room, has an almost musical quality, a low, clear note that rings out after the others subside. You find yourself listening, trying to find a pattern, then feel a flicker of irritation at your own fixation. This is just an old house, its arteries clogged with age. Yet the feeling persists, a nagging unease. It's the plumbing, yes, but it feels intentional, like a message delivered one drop at a time. You glance at the ceiling, following the sound, and notice it, a water stain above where the drip seems loudest. It's oddly shaped, not a simple circle or blob, but elongated, with curves that suggest something like a hand reaching, or maybe just a distorted leaf. You make a mental note to call a plumber, trying to ignore the faint chill that has nothing to do with the house's lack of heating. It's just the house settling, you reassure yourself. Just the pipes singing their ancient, rusty song. But the song sounds increasingly like a sigh, like someone is waiting for you to understand. The dripping becomes a constant companion, a metronome marking not time, but the increasing tightness in your chest. It's always there, even when you try to drown it out with music or the television. Sometimes, late at night, the rhythmic fall of water seems to synchronize with your own heartbeat, a chilling duet of flesh and porcelain. You spend hours tracing the sound, pressing your ear against the wall, trying to pinpoint its source. It's not just the main living room wall anymore. There's a softer, more insistent echo in the hallway now, near the closed door of the guest bedroom. The water stain on the living room ceiling hasn't dried. In fact, it seems darker, its edges bolder. The shape is clearer now, undeniably like a distorted hand reaching downwards, fingers splayed. You tell yourself it's pareidolia, the mind finding patterns where none exist. But the thought feels flimsy, like tracing paper over something solid and cold. One evening, as you sit in the living room, listening to the chorus of gurgles and clanks, the distinct, melodic drip stops. The sudden silence is louder than any noise. Your breath catches. Then, a single wet thud sounds from deep within the wall where the stain is. It's followed by a faint, scraping noise, as if something is being dragged just out of sight. You stand up slowly, your legs trembling. It couldn't be pipes. Pipes don't scrape. But profound fear, cold and sharp, slices through your earlier annoyance. It's not just old. It's alive in a way you cannot comprehend. The house feels different now. The air heavier, colder. The hand-shaped stain on the ceiling seems to pulsate faintly in the dim light, reflecting a moisture that wasn't there before. You back away from the wall, staring at the stain, at the silence that now sits where the drip used to be. What happens when the pipe stops weeping? Does something else begin? You try to leave. You pack your bags, grab the keys you found hanging on a tarnished hook by the door. Heavy, ornate keys that don't seem to fit any lock you found yet. You reach for the doorknob, but your hand freezes. The scraping sound returns, louder this time, closer. It seems to be coming from behind the main wall of the living room, the wall with the stain. You turn, drawn by a morbid curiosity overriding your fear. The stain is larger. It has spread towards the center of the room, the dark, damp splay of fingers now reaching closer to the edge of the ceiling. There's a faint, sour smell in the air, like stagnant water mixed with something vaguely metallic. You walk slowly towards the wall, heart hammering against your ribs. You put your ear against the plaster again. The scraping stops, replaced by a soft, wet sound, like cloth dragging across damp stone, and then a low, guttural sigh. It's not from the pipes, it's from the wall. A wave of nausea washes over you, mixing with a frantic disorientation. Is this real? Did you imagine the sound? You stumble back, your hand instinctively going to the key on the hook by the door. The keys are heavy, solid, real. Unlike the sounds, unlike the stain that seems to breathe. You look from the keys in your hand, to the wall, then back to the door. The scraping starts again, then a distinct sharp rap from inside a wall, right behind the hand-shaped stain. It sounds like knuckles hitting plaster. 1, 2, 3 taps. A pause. Then 3 more. It sounds like someone is trying to get out, or perhaps trying to get in. The ambiguity of the knocks tears at your sanity. You clutch the keys, their cold weight a small comfort against the terror rising from within the house's ancient structure. You cannot leave, not yet, not until you know what knocks. The knocking continues, a relentless, soft rhythm that seems to echo the absent drip. You stop trying to leave. You spend your days in a trance, listening, watching the stain. It has developed texture now, faint ridges and valleys in the darkened plaster, resembling wrinkled skin. The sour smell is stronger, making the air feel heavy and difficult to breathe. The keys, you carry them everywhere, a heavy, useless weight in your pocket. You've tried them in every lock, every cabinet, every drawer. None fit. They are keys to something else, something unknown. The tapping from the wall shifts. It's no longer just knocking. It's scratching now, frantic, persistent, as if something is trying to claw its way through the plaster. Sometimes the scratching is punctuated by soft, wet sounds, like tearing fabric or flesh. You press your ear against the wall again, despite the revulsion. You hear it clearly, the scratching, and then a faint, muffled whisper from within. You pull back as if burned. The whisper is indistinct, a low murmur just beyond the edge of understanding. But you feel its intent. It wants something. Your grasp on reality begins to fray. Sleep offers no escape. Your dreams are filled with the scraping, the smell, and the hand-shaped stain that seems to reach for you from the ceiling. You wake in a cold sweat, the sound of dripping in your ears, even though the wall is silent. The house isn't just old, it's a cage, and you are its latest inhabitant. You look at your own hands, suddenly alien, wondering if they are truly yours, or if they are merely extensions of the hand reaching from the ceiling, guided by some unseen, awful will. What if the keys aren't for a lock, but a release? The whispering from within the wall becomes clearer, though no less unsettling. It's not words you recognize, but a flowing, wet sound, like water trying to speak. The hand-shaped stain is now alarmingly detailed, the dark, damp plaster looking like bruised skin stretched taut. You start noticing small, unsettling changes throughout the house. Objects you distinctly remember placing are moved slightly. A chair is angled differently. A book is open to a random page, facing down. The heavy keys you carry feel heavier, colder, almost humming with a faint, unidentifiable energy. One morning, you wake to find a small, glistening trail leading from the living room wall across the floorboards towards the hallway. It looks like water, but the smell is that same sour, metallic scent. It dries quickly, leaving no trace, but the sight of it sends a tremor through your already fractured composure. You stand staring at the empty floor, wondering if you finally lost your mind. Then you hear it, the distinct, melodic drip from the living room wall returned. But it's different now. It sounds forced, choked, like weeping. You rush into the living room. The stain is there, menacing as ever. But the drip isn't coming from the ceiling. It's coming from a small, dark crack that has appeared in the wall, right in the center of the hand shape. A slow, viscous liquid drips from it, hitting the floor with the familiar, chilling rhythm. You look at the keys in your hand, then at the crack, then back at the ceiling stain. The keys feel suddenly significant, heavy, with unspoken purpose. Perhaps the keys unlock not a door, but a truth. What is trying to weep its way out? The dripping from the crack continues, a slow, painful pulse against the oppressive silence of the house. You no longer question your sanity. You simply exist alongside the strange reality that has unfolded. The stain on the ceiling seems to fade. There is only the drip and the silence that hangs heavy around it. The sour smell is gone, replaced by the faint, clean scent of rain-washed air, incongruous in this decaying house. What was in the wall? What did the stain represent? The questions hang in the air, unanswered, perhaps unanswerable. The house feels empty now, the weight of its history lightened, but not lifted. You are left with the residue of the fear, the memory of the sounds, the lingering image of the hand reaching from the ceiling. The crack in the wall is still there, but it is dry now, a silent scar. The final drip fell hours ago, but sometimes, when the house is perfectly still, you hear a faint echo of that distinct, melodic sound. It's no longer coming from the wall or the ceiling. It feels as if it's coming from deep within you. And if you hear it again tonight, don't answer, not yet. The sounds in the pipes deepen. No longer the simple thrum of water or the metallic groan of old copper. Now, beneath the flow, there is a faint, persistent scratching, rhythmic tapping that echoes hollowly. and worst of all, a sound like distant, distorted whispers. They are carried on the water's current, slithering through the walls. You walk from the kitchen to the living room, and the sounds follow, fading slightly in one space only to become clearer, more insistent. In the next, it is as if whatever makes the noise is moving with the water through the very veins of the house. The water stain on the ceiling, first dismissed as minor, has bloomed. It spiders outwards, a damp, brown nebula consuming the pale plaster. More are appearing now, on the wallpaper near the baseboards, spreading like dark, slow-growing mold behind the sofa, weeping from the corner of a forgotten room upstairs. As you watch them, hours spent tracing their edges with your eyes, you begin to see things in their spreading shapes. Not clear images, nothing you can definitively name, but unsettling resemblances. Twisted faces glimpsed in profile, symbols that feel ancient and wrong, limbs that seem to reach or writhe in the plaster. The stains are no longer random accidents of moisture. Their patterns feel deliberate, as if drawn by an unseen hand. You try to address the problems. You tighten visible pipes, replace a valve, call a plumber whose truck sits idle in the driveway for hours before he shrugs. Baffled. "Pressure's fine," he mutters, tapping a wrench against a pipe that emits only a normal hum. "No leaks I can find. Just old house noises, I guess." But you know it's not just old house noises. The scratching wasn't there before. The whispering wasn't there before. The plumber leaves, taking with him any hope of a simple, mechanical explanation. The issues persist, defying logic, defying repair. A profound anxiety settles, cold and heavy. It sharpens your senses to a painful degree. Every creak of the floorboards is a potential approach. Every shift in the house's settling is a deliberate movement. The world outside shrinks, replaced by the suffocating interior space, every corner of which now seems charged with silent observation. Your ears strain to decipher the pipe sounds, trying to separate the water's rush from the mimicking echoes, which sound increasingly like attempts to form words, gurgling and choked. The stains become an obsession. You find yourself staring at them for long stretches, trying to discern the meaning behind the unsettling figures they present. Are they a language? A warning? Or are you simply projecting your own growing fear onto the damp plaster? You rub at one stain with a cloth, but it only seems to darken, the shape clinging stubbornly to the wall. In the basement, where the main pipes converge in a tangle of copper and rust, you find a small locked cupboard built into the stone foundation, or perhaps it is a section of pipework sealed off and hidden behind a wooden panel. There is no keyhole visible, no handle, just the wood, cool and solid beneath your fingertips. An inexplicable sense of dread emanates from it, a cold spot that no amount of heating can dispel. It feels not just forgotten, but deliberately concealed, holding something you instinctively know you do not want to find. The scratching from the pipes seems loudest down here, just outside this hidden space. You listen, your breath shallow. The tapping begins again, a slow, insistent rhythm against the metal. The sounds from the pipes abandon their soft whispers now, becoming direct, insistent, sharp-edged. They mimic things that twist the air and prickle the skin. Footsteps echo on the floorboards above your locked door, heavy and measured, though you know the upper rooms are empty. A faint ring sounds from the hallway, the precise chime of an old telephone, but you have no landline, haven't for years. Most disturbing are the voices. They are low, warped, like radio static, shaping itself into speech. They are echoes of voices you know, a parent's gentle sigh, a friend's familiar laugh, distorted, slowed, sometimes played backward. They drift from the drains, from the taps, from behind the very walls, making the house feel not just occupied, but actively mocking. Meanwhile, the water stains continue their slow invasion. What were once abstract shapes now possess an unsettling clarity. On the living room wall, a spreading brown patch suggests a handprint, fingers splayed wide in horror. On the ceiling above your bed, a stain forms a pattern startlingly similar to a broken pocket watch, its hands frozen at an impossible time. Sometimes you almost see fragmented words within the dark outlines, letters bleeding into each other, but you blink and they resolve back into meaningless moisture marks. Pareidolia, your mind insists, clinging to reason like a lifeline stretched thin across a chasm. But the feeling persists that the water isn't merely staining, it is writing. The entity, whatever it is, feels closer now, the air growing colder in certain spots. A pressure building behind your eyes. It feels deliberate, as though these manifestations are tailored, personalized disturbances meant only for you. Your psychological state fractures under the strain. Sleepless nights stretch into weeks, punctuated by hypnagogic jerks and the certainty that something is watching from the corner of the room. Inanimate objects seem imbued with malicious intent. A chair leg scrapes the floor when no one is near. A curtain billows in a closed room. A faucet drips with unnatural rhythm. The simple act of identifying sound becomes a terrifying ordeal. Are the whispers coming from the wall, or are they merely thoughts echoing inside your skull? The distinction blurs into painful ambiguity. The symbolic motifs of water stains and echoes intensify, becoming less passive phenomena and more interactive. The stains spread faster after you focus on them, the patterns seeming to shift slightly when you look away. The echoes from the pipes sometimes seem to respond to your movements, your breaths, even the frantic beat of your heart. One evening, tracing the outline of what might be a face on the bathroom wall, you hear a low, guttural chuckle from the sink drain directly below it. Driven by a desperate need to understand, to find anything that explains the impossible, you search the house with feverish intensity. Behind a loose panel in the library wall, hidden beneath moth-eaten insulation, you find it. A small, water-damaged journal. The paper is swollen and brittle, stained with patterns sickeningly familiar. It belongs to a previous occupant, long gone, and its brittle pages, written in a spidery, frantic hand, detail sounds from the pipes mimicking voices, spreading stains that formed unsettling images, and the descent into sleepless suspicion. It confirms your fear, echoing your own experiences across decades, adding a layer of chilling history to your isolation. This house doesn't just have a history. It seems to repeat a specific, terrible note. The stains on the journal bleed into the words, making certain passages illegible, as if the very medium of the narrative is struggling to hold its form against the persistent, spreading dampness. The sounds seem louder tonight, now that you know they are not new. They are old echoes, played on a loop designed for torment. The water patterns on the journal page mirror those on the walls, suggesting a shared language spoken in damp, dark corners. Could the journal itself be a kind of stain, an echo of another fractured mind trapped within these walls? Perhaps the house doesn't just repeat the past. Perhaps it keeps the echoes of its inhabitants, pressing them into the damp wood and staining them onto the plaster, waiting for the next ear to hear the chorus. The house breathes, a slow inhalation through failing pipes, and exhales through the walls themselves. You hear it now, not just as water moving, but as sound carrying meaning, twisted and cruel. It begins with the gurgle, a distinct, resonant sound from the drain in the bathroom sink, unlike any other you've heard here. It's followed by a whisper, barely audible over the fading echo of the drain, repeating a name. Her name. A name you buried years ago, tied to a moment of profound shame you fought utterly forgotten. It's not a clear voice, more like breath shaping air into familiar syllables, impossible and terrifying. How could the house know that? You press your hands to your ears, but the sound seems to vibrate inside your skull. Then the stains. They multiply, these maps of damp decay, but they are changing. They no longer just resemble vague shapes or landscapes. A new one blooms on the ceiling above the bed, spreading slowly. At first, it's just a patch, but as you watch, mesmerized by horror, the edges harden, defining themselves with sickening precision. It looks exactly like the small, tarnished silver locket you kept hidden in a shoebox under your childhood bed, containing a secret no one else ever knew. Another stain, near the floorboards, takes the undeniable shape of the old, disused path behind your grandparents' house, where something happened that you've tried to scrub from your memory. The water stains are no longer random damage. They are cruel reflections, portraits painted in decay, echoing hidden truths you never spoke aloud. This is not just ambient haunting. This is an invasion, a calculated assault on your inner world. You feel utterly exposed, stripped bare not by another person, but by the very fabric of the house itself. Guilt churns into a physical sickness in your gut, shame burning hot on your skin. How is this possible? How can plaster and pipework pry into the deepest corners of your mind? The psychological fracture point is reached. The house, or whatever malevolent consciousness resides within its rotting walls, is actively listening, actively remembering for you. Using your own secrets as weapons. The recurring motif of water stains, once just a sign of neglect, is now a direct, horrifying link to your most private vulnerabilities. Each mark, a brand of your failures or regrets. You notice the physical space warping around this revelation. The areas with the worst water damage feel unnaturally cold, a chill that sinks deeper than the ambient temperature, regardless of how high the heating is set. It's a cold that feels ancient and predatory. And the water from the taps, when you are brave or desperate enough to drink it, sometimes carries a faint, unpleasant taste. Metallic, stale, like stagnant blood or buried things. It's as if the very water, the substance carving these horrific portraits on the walls, is corrupted, holding the essence of the house's violation. You stand paralyzed, staring at the locket-shaped stain, the whisper still a phantom echo in your mind. Does it merely reflect? Or does it actively know? The thought is colder than the dampest wall. The house inhales around you, exhales decay. It's no longer a slow creep, but an acceleration, a physical deterioration mirroring the dissolution inside your skull. Mold erupts on the walls like violent bruises. spreading in hours where it once took days. Fuzzy green blooms crawl over wallpaper. Black tendrils snake across ceilings. Vibrant orange splotches weak down the plaster. Every surface feels coated in a fine, damp dust that smells perpetually of sour milk and disturbed earth. Leaks spring from pipes you didn't know existed. Water trickles, then runs, pooling on warped floorboards, collecting in shallow mirrors that reflect the buckling room. The stains aren't just marks of moisture. They are vast, spreading geographies of brown and yellow, swirling into chaotic, overwhelming patterns. When you stare at them, they seem to writhe, shifting and pulsing at the periphery of your vision. They are patterns without logic, without beginning or end, much like the thoughts struggling to form in your mind. The sounds are a constant siege now. The house gurgles, a sickening, liquid sound from deep within its guts. Whispers hiss from vents that haven't been used in years, too distorted to decipher, yet they vibrate with malicious intent. Taps echo from empty rooms, sharp and insistent, like skeletal fingers knocking on bone. And the groans, deep, resonant groans that seem to come from the structure itself, or perhaps from something trapped within it. The cacophony makes thought impossible, rest a forgotten concept. It is a relentless, auditory assault that pushes you further into the disarray. The entity, if that is what it is, doesn't hide anymore. It is a pervasive presence, thick in the air, pressing in on you from all sides. It distorts your perception, making familiar objects seem alien, bending the light into unsettling shapes. You reach for a door handle, and your hand passes through empty space for a sickening second before finding purchase. You look at your reflection in a cracked mirror, and for a moment, the face staring back isn't yours. Severe memory loss grips you like a physical weight. What happened yesterday, this morning, minutes ago? The details dissolve like sugar in the rampant water. You struggle to recall faces, names, the sequence of events that brought you here. Where even is here? Is this your home? Was it ever? You cannot verify your own identity, staring at your hands, unsure if they belong to you. This is the break, the unraveling. Dissociation wraps around you like a damp shroud, separating you from your own reality, your own history. You can no longer trust your senses. The visual, the auditory, the tactile, they all lie to you, or perhaps they are telling a truth your fracturing mind cannot bear. The overwhelming patterns of the water stains seem to merge with the chaotic static in your head, a visual manifestation of your fractured state. The sounds become the noise of your own mental collapse, and in the reflections of the shallow pools on the floor, where the light warps and shimmers, you catch glimpses, brief, fleeting movements just below the surface, shapes that ripple the water without a stone being dropped. Sounds seem to originate from the very pipes that leak, guttural, wet sounds, as if something is struggling, attempting to pull itself out of the walls, out of the plumbing, into the room with you. Does the water reflect you, or what was always beneath?